Hello my fellow YouTubers and subscribers, and welcome to another movie review by me, Mr. TARDIS11. So, today I am going to review Call of the Wild. This movie is directed by Chris Sanders and stars Harrison Ford in the main role. The film also stars Karen Gillen, Omar Sy, Dan Stevens and Bradley Whitford. So, the basic plot of this movie is a sled dog struggles for survival in the wilds of Yukon. That's basically the plot of this movie in one sentence. To give a bit more, basically it surrounds a dog known as Buck, who is uprooted from his family home in California and goes on a long sort of journey of survival where he meets Harrison Ford's character, who shows him kindness, and he saves him out of a very dreadful situation of which the American man, played by Dan Stevens, is mistreating the dogs and Buck as well. So Harrison Ford's character basically helps Buck, and then they go on this journey for survival. That's pretty much it. Okay, The Call of the Wild. I wasn't really too worried about seeing this movie. I thought, well, you know what, I've got nothing to do today, I will go and watch it. My overall impression of this film is that it's decent. Yeah, I mean, I can't say that it's anything really more than that. It's decent, family, fun. I mean, obviously, there have been other films about The Call of the Wild made before. I haven't seen them personally, so I can't really compare, but this looked kind of intriguing. I mean, and also I am a fan of Harrison Ford, so anything he's in, I will see. He's a good actor. But as for this, for me, it's decent. It has quite a few issues, I will say. For me, the biggest issue is that this movie is aesthetically very poor. The CGI effects are terrible in this film. Okay, I mean, they're not the worst I've ever seen, but they are pretty bad. They are as fake as fakey looking can be, and this movie's about dogs, you know, well, it has dogs in it, so why not actually have dogs and train dogs rather than use CGI? I mean, what? The CGI itself just looks very half-baked, and it's unrendered. It's almost unfinished, you know, which is a problem for me, because it takes me out of the realism of the situations that the dogs are in. I can't invest in Buck as a character because he doesn't look real enough, and it's a design fault, and it's a technical error that needed to be fixed, and it wasn't. I just think, I understand, obviously, training dogs is very difficult and very time-consuming, but it can be done. I mean, you know, look at films like 101 Dalmatians. They've got loads of dogs for that movie, and very rarely did they use CGI shots. They only used a few when necessary. This, every single dog in this film is CGI, and that's just a real disappointment to me. I really wish that all the dogs were actually real dogs. I understand that they tried to make it more realistic, what with the dog's emotions. The close-up shots, I can understand. You want to do those with CGI, that's fine, to show more emotion. I want to understand that, but yeah, I didn't care, really. I didn't really care for it, to be honest. That being said, it is interesting to see Buck's journey of survival and how he goes from a respectable dog in a family home to living out in the wild. I mean, the story is nothing amazing, but it's generic, and again, it's fun. It's fun for what it is, shall we say. Again, because of the very poor effects, it's hard to invest. Even the scenes when Omar Sy is sledding with the dogs, the backdrop looks fake as well. The background green screen shots are so obvious. Oh my god, it's just terrible. It's really not aesthetically pleasing to watch. It really isn't, and for me, this movie is a visual fail. It really is. Visual fail 101. So, I've told you this movie was decent, and yet I've complained about the effects. So, what actually is it that I like about this film? As I said, I mean, the human cast are all very good. I mean, Omar Sy, actually, I think is a particularly good character in this film. He plays this sort of dog trainer who trains the dogs to operate the sled, and he actually believes in Buck, and Buck to be an actual a leader, you know, because originally, the original alpha of the group is overthrown by Buck because, well, he doesn't like Buck, and then Buck has to basically get rid of him and scare him away, and he does. There are some genuinely sweet moments, like when Omar Sy's character says goodbye to Buck. That is quite a sweet moment, despite the fact that he's hugging nothing but a CGI thing. So Harrison Ford is in this movie, and he plays the main human character in this film. He's not actually in it as much as I would imagine him to be. He's in the first half of the film for a couple of glimpses, and then we don't really get to know him until the second half of the film. We learn that he is a grieving man. He's lost his son, and him and his wife basically have separated because they just can't recover from the trauma. And he is writing letters to his wife, explaining his grief and his and his loss for their son. And then he's writing to her explaining that he's befriended this dog known as Buck and blah blah blah. There you go. The relationship between Harrison Ford's character and the dog is actually quite sweet. It is quite sweet to a certain extent. It's just annoying because of how bad the CGI is, and that's really where I feel this movie could have excelled if the CGI was a lot better, or if they'd have just used real dogs. Also, the pacing of this movie is slow. By the time we get to the sort of the wild, the film kind of slows down a bit and it struggles to maintain its momentum. I think they could have cut out about 10 minutes of this film and it could have been a lot brisker. That being said, the finale of this movie is so abrupt. The finale of this film is just is over way too quickly. The villain of this film is underwritten as hell. The villain of this film is really badly underwritten. The villain is played by Dan Stevens, and I think his name is Hal. He doesn't do anything in the movie. He comes in halfway into the film and takes ownership of the dogs when Omar Sy's character has been kicked out, because eventually what they do is they use the dogs as like a means of transport to deliver post. In the end, they have to sell up because they've found new ways to post mail. And Dan Stevens' character takes ownership of the dogs, but he really mistreats them. He's an absolute arsehole. And he has some tensions with Harrison Ford, and basically he then doesn't appear again until the end. He's pursuing him for some reason, and then he just, turns up, and then they have that confrontation, and then it's over. I shan't actually spoil what happens in the final confrontation, but it's just, again, what? Dan Stevens is a good actor and he performs the part well, but the character is just nothing. He's written so badly. He's just thrown into the film because they need a villain, and the way the way he exits the film is very abrupt, and the way the third act kind of culminates the movie is very abrupt. It doesn't feel like Harrison Ford's character gets emotional closure, because he's gone out on this journey to find solace and to find peace, basically, to come to terms with what's happened to his son. And the dog, Buck, obviously finds other dogs out in the wild, and he finds his home. But Harrison Ford's character doesn't really do that, and he says, "Oh, I'm going to go back home," and then the final incident happens, and then it's just, that's it. It's what? It feels completely rushed, and I think the ending of this film is poor. Really, I think it's very poor. From the point of view of Harrison Ford's character, I think his ending is very poor. That being said, the music of this film is very good. I do like the score by John Powell, and it fits with the movie quite well. The costume design and set design is very good. There's, in the main sort of village of this film, where most of the action takes place, it almost has the feeling of kind of like a western, which is nice. It is interesting to see the dog go on his journey, but again, it's because the effects are so bad. I find it really hard to invest in this movie. Also, Karen Gillen nabs a cameo in this film. Karen Gillen, who's famous for being in the Marvel movies as Nebula, and also as Amy Pond in Doctor Who. She nabs a cameo in this film. And, she's kind of amusing in her little part, I suppose. I do like Harrison Ford's narrations of the story, though. I do like the fact that he's, obviously, the way he's telling the story from his viewpoint. And there are some good performances here. The drama is solid, and it's a well-written film. The script is good, and you really do, you feel like there is emotion there. It's just, on a technical level, it's a mess. It fails. So really, I think that the film is almost kind of a waste of potential, because I feel you could have just used real dogs and it would have made the whole thing a lot better, or at least clean up the CGI, because it just looks really half-baked, and it's hard to really get invested in this film because of that. But there are some genuinely nice moments in here, but not enough to really levitate the emotion very much. The ending is just rushed, and it's completely, I don't know, I just didn't like the way the film ended, and I didn't like the villain. I thought he was just totally underwritten. Again, Dan Stevens tried his best, but it really just did not work for me. To me, this is a very mixed bag. I think there's some good ideas here, and there's some genuine heart and emotion, and some good performances. But it's nothing amazing. The story is generic. We've seen this story before, but you know, it's a fun, you know, couple of hours for what it is. I will close off by scoring this one a 7 out of 10. There we go. That's my review of Call of the Wild. Stay tuned for future reviews. So thank you all for watching, and as always, I'm Mr. TARDIS11. See ya.